And before my eyes rising on a sea of fog, I saw a spectral castle scraping the heavens like a fistful of swords. From that castle there did descend a skeletal legion, unending. Oh, hey there, just talking to myself. Greetings, chromatic warriors. Working on a very special project today. After traveling to Monte San Savino, I am left with, if I had to distill my artistic thoughts and direction down to one single sentence, I must paint bigger things. So, while I was there, I picked up this model from Chimera. What's it called? Living Corpse, Lion Banner. And I think I can really do my thing with this fella. So today I will be painting up the base. You may have seen it sculpted in the blog section on Patreon. Check that out. Yeah, I need to conjure a nighttime mood, a haunted mood, a lot of cool colors. And I ended up having a lot of fun with this one. So, oh, also please pardon my voice during the some of these clips. I went to medieval times for my birthday, and days later my voice is still hoarse. Let's get into it. In the beginning, many dark, cold colors swirled about the earth. First, deep ocean blue, then trace amounts of desert yellow were all brought into the picture, but along a pathway there rose a channel of light. A little bit more desert yellow on the old channel of light here. And then, along that channel of light, there was a beam of worn stone. Beautiful. I love wet blending, just mashing all of these colors together a la prima, just seeing what comes out, gently guiding the tone of things by adding slight amounts of paint, sort of tipping the ingredients in a certain direction. See, I'd like to be a little colder here, focus up that channel of light. Yeah, I have a lot of atmosphere that I'd like to conjure on this one when you're dealing with the undead. We'll be chatting about that as the video continues, but first of all, one of the main goals is going to be creating an air of coldness. Maybe a nighttime scene. You know, the undead are more often seen when it's dark out, so we'll go with that. Just adding a little bit of desert yellow onto these discarded pieces of wood as well. There's also another color that's in play. I was kind of slopping around before, finding my footing, seeing what fits, and that's Templegate Teal. I like what that's bringing into the picture, and I'm just going to place that as a mid-tone, and in these crevices that I've sculpted into the stone. This would be a good way to define the steps, but keep their shadows much lighter in this brighter mid area. Okay, not a bad start. I'd like to attend to this stony gate next. First of all, I don't want to forget about the overall gradation. Generally, I want this arch to be a little bit brighter at the top and darker as it sinks down towards the ground. So I have black and Temple Guard Teal mixed together, and I'm bringing larger amounts of Temple Guard Teal into this brighter area, and then as I get even further up, I can bring in amounts of worn stone. So overall, just kind of seeing this as one chunk with, trying to ignore the textures that I'm seeing. So I want to get things colored in that way. Checking back in on that, now you can see I have my overall gradient laid in place. Time is of the essence. I can overbrush and pick out all these slight textures that I sculpted into the model. And it's important to do this while the paint is somewhat wet still. It's just going to help things slide, but this is somewhere between a dry brush, right? This is the overbrushing approach.
So you can see there's a little bit of moisture involved, and using this wide flat brush, controlling the angle, it will leave the recesses mostly untouched. We're moving through stages of rendering. There will be more detailed brush strokes ahead, but for now, I like to just gently pick out the textures. And rising above a lake of fog, there would be a great castle thrust into the sky like the mandibles of a beast. First, I need to conjure up some background, though. I'm taking my deep ocean blue and a little bit of turquoise Siren. I'm creating that murky backdrop layer. Just, again, wet blending things together. One of the important things to keep in mind when you're working on a backdrop like this is you want to keep everything hazy, undetailed. I think in the past a lot of my backdrops are a little overdone, maybe too sharp. So this time what I'd like to see from myself is something a little more sunken into the mist, and that's going to be much more fitting for what I'm after here. Just these two colors back and forth. Try to carve in some cloud shapes ever so slightly, but I do want it to look like, pretty thick, overcast night sky. And once I have things kind of roughly mocked up, I'll try to get some of those more classical haunted cloud shapes into play. Just some horizontal line work to create some breakup within this murky, dark area. I can always go back and forth, kind of working some of that darker color in as well. Being dark, deep ocean blue, I'm just thinking of it as the lighter and darker color. Saying I want to have a layer of fog hovering over this lake, so first, just setting the foundation for that, I'm going to pull some worn stone in with that turquoise Siren. Let's have that, kind of resting at about shin height if I was going to use the foreground character as a measuring device. Whoops, I have gotten a little bit ahead of myself. The recording equipment failed me a little bit and did not capture my voice, but adjustments have been made. So I'm working some turquoise Siren into the picture, and also to create this closer up foggy covering, small amounts of worn stone are being worked in. And this is kind of a fun area to play in when I'm just freehanding, creating almost an abstract design. It doesn't necessarily need to look like fog. It needs to look like my drawing of fog. In miniature painting, a lot of the time, the kind of line between realism and animation is crossed. That rule of cool. Non-metallic metal is a good example. That's not necessarily how it looks in real life. You're kind of imitating it, and then at a certain point, you are painting it, applying it a certain way because that looks really cool on miniatures. Slowly wet blending some clouds into the upper area the same way. I'm having a lot of luck just gently pressing down with the tip of the brush, swirling it. That's giving me a nice roundness, and it's helping to saturate the surface, bring these clouds out. It's going to take a few levels of lifting, dipping into my deep ocean blue and sometimes even black. Kind of generally building up a lighter area like the castle, standing right about there. I'll let this sit and dry. Now I've switched up my game a little bit, changing over to a round brush, and I'm trying to mix and match more closely. I'm working with a glaze-like consistency. If I happen to wet blend two of these glazes together, that's fine. But working with much thinner amounts, just trying to soften and smooth out these cloud forms that have come together, adding a little bit of a touch here and there, adding to the depth. Still working with varying mixes of worn stone and Aegis Aqua, but again, there's a second coat going on top of a differing technique. And inside of this, I'm seeing this curling, kind of smoky shape taking form, and I'd like to add to that. Kind of a happy accident as I find my form, and the more I can get this to look like a fantasy art painting, I think the more fitting. We'll start working this center up to be a little bit lighter. I'm always trying to keep in mind that my character is going to be occupying a certain amount of this area. Just a lot of gradual cloud-like glazing. Nice and thin. Slowly build up those layers. Just remember dilution, transparency. Those are your best friends in this situation. Creating a nice murky atmosphere. Another thing that I'm seeing here is the scale. I want the clouds, to look like they're gliding backwards across the sky, so the perspective would make them become smaller. These light blue gaps would be closer and closer together as the clouds get further away. Just want to make sure to kind of pull that in. I'm able to just take Turquoise Siren and corral them in a way. Just keep everything, nice and light so it looks airy. Give it a foggy look, and also my mistakes will be made much more slowly, and I can correct them that way. Finding my form, trace amounts of paint, just like so. All right. I can work on the other side of that, bring a little bit of that deep ocean blue mixture into play. Draw a nice thin, chunky cloud. Seeing is believing. It's hard to just describe every single thing you're doing when it's very much a visual language. Some even thinner clouds as they go off into the distance. That's probably good. Let me go back over all of this, get everything a little more saturated. We will add another layer. Summon me a castle like a sword that scrapes the sky. All right, let us try to slowly form a castle, and it'll be sinking into the mist. My intention is to, have this kind of spirous, if that's a word, a very pointy castle. I want it to have a certain necromantic attitude to it. So we'll start off with some very long and narrow towers, kind of building around one larger main point. Just working this in with deep ocean blue. Let's work the very basic shapes, and I know it looks like, oh, hey, just draw a castle, but there are a lot of things this can look like. It kind of looks like a funny cactus. I would suggest going online, looking into books, a little observation. It's hard to go out and see castles on a daily basis, but just informing your mind a little bit, have some images to look at, making a napkin sketch. In the past videos, this kind of thing, you've seen me create a few test drawings. The point being that there are a lot of resources to pull from, and I always jog my memory by doing exactly what I was describing. And then there lurked a castle in the murk. Still just bringing that up with some deep ocean blue, and you can see I've just added some smaller, sharper details to it. I think I'll bring more of those in, but I wanted to stop where I was and move back to a larger brush. See, I'm blending it into the atmosphere below, just making sure I maintain a certain level of murk and fog. So before I, go too far into the castle, just make sure that the base of it is looking nice. Build up the foundation. It's easy to get tunnel vision when you're working on miniatures. Start working on these, tiny areas and just get pulled in. It's very fascinating. But one must remember to always see the forest through the trees. Very nice, very nice. The smoothing has begun. All right. Give me a little bit of that pale moonlight. I don't necessarily want to draw the moon itself in place. It's a very cloudy night, as you can see. But often that pale, baleful light does show through even a heavy clouded night. So I'd like a little indication of brightness conveniently placed behind this castle spire. So still is blending things together with deep ocean blue and talisman teal. Much greater concentration in the middle here. It's going to be a little rough at first. I can always jump back to a dark color and kind of chop some of the cloud shapes in there. It doesn't have to be so perfectly blended all around, just creating a very rough spherical shape. Let's get a little more talisman teal in there while that bit of cloud is still wet. So not bad, but it can be a lot wider. I want things to be brighter and to shift in tone. So let me just expand that a little bit. It's all paint, just back and forth nature of the art. And while that's still wet, bring some worn stone into place. It's becoming my kind of pale, all-purpose off-white for this project, and I'm not mad about it. Let's get a little circular moonlight. It needs to be a little brighter back here. Now, to my spectral castle in the distance, I'd like a faint indication of life. I'd add some small dots of glowing Inferno wherever I'd like there to be a little bit of a lit room or a row of windows. It's a good way to imply some deeper details on the old castle. I don't want to overdo it, but this looks very nice, this brightness against such a cold darkness. And I can also start detailing out my foggy mist, kind of sharpening some of these hard edges that I see occurring. I want to create the impression that he has just kind of stepped through a soup-thick mist. So having it kind of kicking out and curving back this way, and then pulling off the opposite on the other side. So having the hard lines kind of facing inward on most of these clouds. It'll give it the impression that it's being pushed away from the center. Extra Mr. Misty. I've got some bleached bone loaded up into the airbrush. I'd like to just illustrate on top of what I've already painted in place. I feel like I have just the perfect tool for the job here to give myself a nice, smooth, foggy coat. So why not use every tool in the belt, as the tool man would say. Okay, let's finish this off. Oh, hey, listen to that. My voice is better. Slightly. I'm still recovering from visiting medieval times. Anyways, Temple Guard Teal, my friend. Had sort of a specular highlight on the castle. These are all cones, and generally the light is coming from the left side of the cones. I just thought the little naked out there is just a bare silhouette, so I wanted to just throw in, an indication of texture, Just a slight amount of dimension. Again, I don't want it to be too detailed. I'll take some turquoise Siren, cut that right across the surface of what has become the lake. This body of water. Just want to make sure, there's a good separation. Those clouds are getting smaller as they sink away into the distance. I use the Temple Guard Teal to add to the lake effect. Get the watery waves swept in place. Formerly it was all misty, but I like this wavy form. Put some worn stone in with that Temple Guard Teal. Start working, some kind of waves and channels into the waters. And I'm also using a small amount of pure white to finish off the fog. Just capping it off. Just need a little bit more dimension, just one slight step up in brightness. And it's laid down in layers, so it's going to dry to a more transparent end. Yeah, just a little more ghostly cloud form. What a lovely castle. Now I can return to the foreground. I have my trusty flat brush in hand. Just a little bit of moisture involved. I'm taking trace amounts. It's a mixture of deep ocean blue, Temple Guard Teal, and a little bit of worn stone. I'll increase the amount of worn stone as I get up into the higher and brighter areas. But yeah, for now it's giving me a very nice cold stone texture. And as I move upward, just increasing the amount of worn stone involved. It's all right, certainly if a little bit of texture comes through. Yeah, just like so. I'm basically overbrushing. You can see me starting at the top of each brick. So as I go downward, I'm running out of paint. It's just a little deeper at the base of each brick. Neato, and while I still have the larger set of brushes out, pull out the old dry brush from Army Painter. First pulling some of this desert yellow into the kind of off areas, these dirtier areas that are just to the side of the trodden path. Just a gentle overbrushing. Be sure to catch those little planks of wood as well. And I'll add a little bit of worn stone into that, just still on the same brush without cleaning it. So bringing up some of these lighter textures in the flattened area. All right, switching the dry brushes. The other one is now wet. I had to change it over. But now I'm just adding a layer of worn stone. And yeah, just kind of having some messy fun with it. Doesn't matter if I go over that desert yellow, but I want to try to do it in a much lesser amount. You can see the effect that it's having. Very nice. Now what I have is my own custom mixed wash. I've combined amounts of sepia ink, black paint, and scarab green paint. The idea here is that I get the viscosity of the ink. I had to tone things in a certain matching direction with the colors of paint, and the paint will also counteract the potential glossiness left behind by the ink. Diluting that heavily, just adding water, and you can see a little bit goes a long way. The ink packs a lot of pigment density, so just add a small amount at a time. I'm going to give all of this a coating. The ground, the gateway, the whole thing. Continuing along with my mixtures of deep ocean blue, Temple Guard Teal, and worn stone, always in varying amounts, according to the height, kind of this ascending value that we've been talking about. But yeah, as you can see, I've switched brushes again and paying much closer attention to any of these subtle textures, and even adding some here and there where they may not exist. You can always paint things to be a little more craggy than they actually are. Go up a little bit brighter here with a larger amount of worn stone mixed in. And this is another way I can correct some of my clumpy sculpting by just painting a sharper, more defined edge in place. I often lack the proper patience for a good sculpt, but I do all right with these mushed up bricks. I have my work cut out for me, as you can see, and I need to pay attention to every single brick on this thing, but that's what we're here for, to make beautiful art. So let me continue along and get this stage finished off. Very nice. Still sharpening things up a bit on the bricks. I keep jumping around. There's a lot of details to get lost into, but as I layer those up, I'd also like to bring some grimy streaks into play. I'll be using some of that desert yellow. It's thinned down, and wherever there's a little bit of dirt packed into the crevices, just kind of drag a light dilution downward and let it gradually accumulate. You can see on the other side here how that varying consistency makes it much more lifelike, and that's what I'm after. So I'll be adding some streaks, and I also have to polish this walkway off. I'll be using the old combo of worn stone, desert yellow, and talisman or temple guard teal, excuse me, once again. But just going in there with my finer brush, picking out the tiny little bits of grit, pulling out the edges, just generally refining, defining everything with a fine toothed brush. And that should do it for me on this base. I have the chain here, but I'm going to be painting non-metallic metals on the model itself later on down the line. So I'm just going to save the chain for when I have my array of gray in play. Just a few final fun steps of foliage. I'm pulling out some wasteland grass from Gamer's Grass, and I like what the kind of kick of red adds to things. Honestly, a little too large. Let me just tear that in half. I like this pluck and stick material because I can rearrange it and move it around. I usually glue it down in the end. I'll hit this with a slight dry brush as well. We've all seen that before. Being able to kind of place it where I like, decide if that's its final resting place. Very nice.
Oh, what have you done? Why did you not paint that on the side of a minivan and then tour across the country? It could happen. Anything could happen. Things happen all the time. So thank you for checking this video out. I'm really proud of the way this one came together. Some of my freehands, they're a little too sharp at times. I don't know. Maybe that's okay, but I wanted to try something different, as usual. Create something a little more ambient and spectral, sitting back there. And I think this already tells a really fun story. So I'll get on to the foreground living corpse in due time. I'll be, tomorrow. And I'm really excited for that because that will also have to be rendered with a series of cold tones, yet I must, have the creature stand apart from the background. So I'm thinking I need to create some, like a cold yellow palette for the tunic. I have a lot of ideas, and that's always exciting. So please let me know how you feel in the comment section down below. I really like hearing from everybody, and suggest any content you'd like to see, any comments, constructive comments on the videos. Thank you. Appreciate the support. So, until you see me in another video, I have but one wish, and that is for you to remain unchained. Unchained.